Lesson 4-1, Graphing Equations in Slope-Intercept Form. The slope-intercept form of a linear equation is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So that means where the line intersects with y. Let's take a look at an example. This here says, write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line with a slope of 3/4 and a y-intercept of -2. So if we do that, we write out what our equation is, mx plus b. We know that m is the slope, so 3/4. X stays the same, and b is the y-intercept. So we could write it as plus -2, or you can just write this out as y equals 3/4x minus 2. So this would be your equation, and then we're also able to graph this equation on a graph. So when we graph an equation like this one, we are able to use the y-intercept and the slope to create our graph. So I'm just kind of sketching out a blank graph here, and then we'll start graphing. So you first want to plot the y-intercept. Well, we know that the y-intercept is -2. So that means that our x is 0 and our intercept. So this would be how you would write out the point of your y-intercept. So we're first going to graph that point. So it's 0, -2, so it's right here. The slope is now 3/4. So 3/4. And this is a rise over run. So rise over run is how we think of slope. Or the slope of a line is how fast it's rising and how far it's running. So rise over run means that you rise 3 and then you would run 4. So our point would be about right here. And you can continue doing this rising over running, and it would continue to give you some extra points. But we're just going to do the 2 points here, and we're just going to connect those 2 points to get our graph. Pause the video to write an equation and graph the example below. The slope is -1/2, and the y-intercept is 3. So if we first want to write our equation, we have y equals -1/2 x plus 3. So now I can just sketch out my graph, and my y-intercept is going to be at a +3. But my rise over run looks a little bit different. So this means that since it's -1/2, this means that you're going to rise a -1, which means you're actually going to go down, and then you're going to go over. So we're going to go down and then over. So if I go down 1 and then over 2, you want to make sure that you're going over -2. The whole thing is negative. So my dot would be here. And I'm going to do this one more. I'm going to actually do 2 more dots. I'm going to go down 1 over 2. But then I'm going to change this slope, and I'm going to make it a positive. So we rise 1 and go over 2. So again, you can always use more dots to kind of solidify your graph. to make sure that it looks correct. We can also take equations and we can graph them. So you first want to rewrite it in the slope-intercept form. So I'm just going to jot this form down up in the corner so that we remember what the form is and how we need to have this one written. So as you can see, you're trying to get the y on the left and the x on the right. So this is kind of just moving some things around. But to do that, we have to kind of subtract and add or multiply and divide things from each side. So let's first work on getting the 3x on the other side. So if I need the 3x over here, I need to subtract it from this side. So now I have 2y equals negative 3x plus 6. So we now have our y and our x in the right place. So we are going to divide everything by 2. And so we have y equals negative 3 halves x plus 6 divided by 2, which is 3. So now you would have your equation and you would be able to graph it. So you're going to plot your y-intercept, which is going to be plotted at 3, and then you're going to go down 3 over 2, down 3 and over 2, and you're going to create your line. We can also use this technique when we are trying to graph linear functions or linear equations. So if you have something like y equals negative 3, okay, they're wanting you to graph this, and this is a linear function. So to graph it, if your y-intercept is negative 3, then you find the negative 3 and you plot your point. But we don't have anything else. The slope is 0 in this case because it's pretty much in y-intercept form. 0, which would be your slope, times anything is 0, so it cancels out and just leaves behind. Because you could write this in your slope-intercept form. You could write y equals mx plus b, and they tell you that y is negative 3. Well, they don't tell you the slope, so we're going to assume the slope is 0. So if that's the case, then to simplify this, it simplifies down to y equals negative 3, which is what they've given us. So that means that there's no slope, so your line just looks like this. Pause the video to try a few examples below. For the first example, we have y equals a positive 5. So we're just going to graph our 5, and you know that the slope is 0, and so this is what your line looks like. Now for this next one, you have to get y by itself, so we have to simplify a little bit. So we divide both sides by 2, so we get y equals 1/2. So it's a positive 1/2. Again, we plot our point, and then we create our line. Pause the video to complete the lesson review. Make sure you show me this lesson review for verification of completing this video.